I'm going to be cutting my fabrics for the squares using my rotary cutter and mat. All of these are marked in inches, which makes it easy for me to do the 12.5 inch squares that I will need. And so I have my ruler and my rotary cutter and the mat. To cut your fabrics, you want to start by folding it in half with the selvage edge together. The selvage is the finished edge. Even though it looks like there's some threads on this end, I cannot pull on them and pull them off. This is the raw edge, and this is the edge we want to trim. So we're going to start. I've got my selvages folded right together, neatly lined up, and I have them lined up with the approximately 1/2 inch line on my board. And I'm going to trim off this outside edge to start with. And I just find a line on the mat that is going to line up for the cut. So I'm actually going to cut at 2¼ inches in order to straighten this edge. So I'm lining up my ruler with that line or that marking, and then I'm going to put pressure on my hand. I'm actually leaning into my hand from my shoulder. I'm going to use my rotary blade. You always cut away from yourself. You want to make sure your fingers aren't hanging over the edge. This is a razor-like blade. It's very sharp. And then good pressure, approximately a 45-degree angle. And you just push away from yourself, pressure on the ruler, pressure on the cutter. If it makes that nice sound, I know I've cut. And this is basically garbage. And I have a nice straight edge here. So now I'm going to move this over to do my first cut for my squares. And I'm doing 12-inch squares when it's finished, so I'm actually going to cut a 12.5 inch cut because we use 1/4 inch seam allowances when we're quilting. And so by doing 12.5 inches, I get that 1/4 inch all the way around my square. So now I'm lined up on 12.5. Again, good pressure from my shoulder down to my hand on the ruler, cutting 45-degree angle away from myself. And again, nice smooth cut. Now the beauty of a rotary cutter is I can take this and turn it, and now I'm going to actually cut 2 squares at one time. Depending on the fabric, sometimes I'll layer fabrics and do 4 layers at a time. I don't often do more than that. It depends on the thickness of the fabric, but your blade might have trouble getting through it. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut off the selvage. So I'm lining up on a horizontal line, and I'm going to trim the selvage off on a vertical line. Again, good pressure, nice smooth cut. So now I'm going to shift that over to what I call the 0 line. Sometimes people put it on the 1 line, and then if you do a 12.5 inch cut, you end up with an 11.5 inch square. So you want to line it up on the 0 line, and then again lined up on the 12.5, and do a nice smooth cut there. So now I have 2 squares that are 12.5 inches, and my extra fabric I can use for something else. And I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of my squares out of the other 2 colors. My squares are cut. I've chosen to use a cotton twill for this today. When I do an activity quilt, I like something with a little bit more weight to it to support the features that I'm going to be putting on it. And everything, of course, is pre-washed so that it won't shrink after it's sewn together.